Create Art Podcast, Project National Novel Writing Month and National Podcast Post Month. Hello friends, this is Timothy Chemo Bryan, your head instigator for Create Art Podcast, where I take my 20 plus years of experience in the arts and education world and help you tame your inner critic and create more than you consume. Well, it's November, can you believe it? For me, that means celebrating my favorite holiday, which is Thanksgiving. Also, this is my third year for National Novel Writing Month, and where I'll be writing a 50,000 word novel and podcasting every day for National Podcasting Post Month. Killing two birds with one stone. So you're going to hear from me every day in the month, reading the daily output of the novel. I'd appreciate any comments that you have, so please feel free to let me know what you're thinking. You can email me, timothy@createartpodcast.com, or if you go right to the website on each day, you can post your comments right there on the post. Now, why do I do this? Well, if I'm going to ask you to be brave out there and share your work, then I better do it myself. Plus, it keeps my creative muscle going. And who knows what's going to come out of my keyboard here. The podcasting side of the house, it helps me develop my podcasting skills in editing, posting, show notes, all that other stuff that hopefully you don't hear too much of. Now, you can find out about National Novel Writing Month by going to my website and in the show notes, and I'll have the links there for you. And also, National Podcasting Post Month also is going to be in the show notes. So here's today's output. Okay, so today is November the 8th, 2022. Words today, 1,837. It brings the total up to 12,219. And this one was an interesting day of writing. There was a tap on Detective Courtney's door. He stood up immediately and went over to open it. "We're all done with the phones, Detective Courtney," said the officer who knocked on the door. "Thanks. Let me know the findings as soon as you can," replied Detective Courtney. He handed back the phone to the Bales. The detective received a notification on his phone from the burglar team that they needed another 30 minutes to finish their work. He didn't need to acknowledge because they would see that he had read the message. "Bales are back up and running at the police station," reported username 87 to username 1. "Okay, so any other mobile phones in their general vicinity?" asked username number 1. "Just the detectives, and received a text message just a few minutes ago," replied username number 87. "Get us the information on that number and let us know who is texting him in the middle of an interview," replied username 1. "Affirmative. May I inject something?" asked username 87. "Sure," replied username 1. "Do you think it's time to deploy the tool?" asked username 87. "I think we are about at that time. Get the info on that number and we will convene a meeting with all the players in this," replied username number 1. Cody was sitting at his desk reviewing the information that was being sent to him from the burglars and the police station. There was a lot of minutia to go through, and he wasn't exactly sure what he could use from what was being collected. The burglars had videotaped every room in the house, including all the drawers and closets. The next update would provide a detailed video inventory of the Bales' garage, and then they would leave the residence. The phone records and data on them provided more data that they could use to discredit the Bales. Mark's phone had detailed messages about projects he was working on for his day job, and on Tinley's phone he found apps that would be linked to opposition groups. This was a treasure trove that they had willingly handed over and would make their job easier. He mentally patted himself on the back for recruiting Detective Courtney and his team. Their contribution in the past and on this incident was exactly what he wished they had 2 years ago for the high school shooting. He sent a meeting request to Wolfgang, who had just gotten home from his uncle's house. He was playing video games when the request came in. Immediately, he turned down the volume on the game and pulled out his mini laptop and turned it on. "We are sanitized. So, Wolfgang, I see you are not at work today," asked Cody. The boss told me to take off early since we've been working so hard the past few weeks. Do you have the script in yet?" asked Wolfgang. "Not yet. We're still getting details from sources. I wanted to talk to you about your job. How closely do you work with Mark Bale?" asked Cody. "We're on the same team. He reads the Stoics while eating lunch. He's probably the best performer on the team," replied Wolfgang. "Well, no, that's not... Well, no. Well, no. What I want to know is how well do you know him and how closely do you work with him?" asked Cody, a bit annoyed. "We have worked on some projects together. He's a real go-getter and not a brown-noser. He's a very independent worker, and the boss seems to really like his work and reports. He's just a few cubicles down from me, so I have access to his computer," replied Wolfgang. "That is what I'm looking for. Does he always lock down his computer when he's away from his desk?" asked Cody. "Not always. I think I get where you're going with this," replied Wolfgang. "Don't get ahead of me, but yes, we will need just a few minutes of access to his computer. We can load some things in a thumb drive that we would need you to deploy. Think you are up for the task and a promotion at work?" asked Cody. "Well, since he won't be back at work for a few days at least, I should have unfettered access to his computer. The only problem is I am certain that he locked it down before he left, and I don't know his passcode to get in," replied Wolfgang. "No worries. Just give me the specs on what your IT uses for passcodes, and we'll get it to you tomorrow morning. You'll have to do this quickly because we'll be broadcasting full force tomorrow. We're just sending out feelers tonight," replied Cody. "I can get that for you right now," replied Wolfgang. "No, give it to Adrian or Dylan. They're working on the script now, and we'll be able to sift through the information we have on Mark and grab that passcode. Like most people, I am sure he has it stored somewhere where we can retrieve it. Cody out," said Cody. The screen went blank, and Wolfgang shut down the mini laptop and smiled. Not only was he triggering action to move the followers of Xeno to action, but he was playing an integral part in being relied on to do important work. Username 1 notified all individuals working on the Ale school shooting to provide an update and status report. "Thank you for joining on such short notice. As you know, we have this incident on our hands with the followers of Xeno already making chatter online. I fully expect them to start attacking the character of the Bales. It would appear that they have certain contacts in the police department, and the Bales' phones we can only assume have been compromised. Just a little while ago, their residence was broken into by 2 unknown assailants. However, a text message did get out, and we were able to trace the number. It belongs to one of the lower echelon members of the followers of Xeno. That could be our inject point if we decided to deploy the tool. Do we have an estimate on how long it would take for the tool to worm its way into their network?" asked username number 1. "Depending on the user's access, we should expect to see results within 12 hours and have access to the network," said username number 42. "I do want to stress we haven't deployed anything like this in the past, so we don't have accurate benchmarks to compare. The followers of Xeno have a lower-level network with many users who are not as savvy as they should be. I don't think the inject point you were speaking of will be difficult to deploy the tool. My main concern is the parameters once it gets inside the network. It'll be on its own trying to find a way to reach back to us and report in. Once that happens, what do we do if we can't convince it to stand down? We can't just shut it off and poof, it goes away, replied username number 42. Username number 72. We haven't heard from you at all during this incident. Since you originated the idea of the tool, we'd appreciate your insights, asked username number 1. We're using the wrong tool. This is a hammer when we need a scalpel. This tool is designed to get in and sniff out cyberbullying and end it. What you have proposed what you all have proposed is to use it as a weapon to take down the followers of Xeno, essentially because you disagree with the way they portray their views. I'm not a fan of them either, but unleashing this tool will bring their network down as well as everyone associated with their network. So we get a little fish off the networks. What happens when somebody else bigger than the followers of Xeno notice the tool? How we took the followers of Xeno down? Will they come to us to use our tool for their own purposes? Will they retaliate? Will they study it and make their own? They are not the only group out there that have similar viewpoints, and some of the big fish in that pond could take us out just as easily, replied username number 72. These are valid points, but we are in a time crunch here and need to act. Does anyone not want to deploy the tool? Asked username number 1. No one objected. Even username number 72 was silent. I'll take your silence for assent. Username number 72, inject the tool in the cell phone we have identified, and we'll keep watch over their network to see when and where it surfaces. My colleagues, we're going into unexplored territory. If there's a team that can pull it off, this is the team to do it. Username number 87, please keep us informed of any chatter coming from Xeno and the Bales. I would expect a news conference soon about the shooting, and I'm sure not long after we will hear from the Xeno folks. Stay sharp, everyone, and pull us into a meeting if anything happens, said username number 1. Mark had just returned from the morgue where he identified his daughter's body. Tinley immediately held him as he entered Detective Courtney's office. I'm sorry you had to do that, Mr. Bale, but we need to get a positive ID on your daughter. Again, I can't express how sorry I am for your loss. I've given your wife some literature of grief counselors and legal aid for when that time comes. Just know that we'll do everything in our power to see that to get this guy and make sure he never sees daylight again. You have my word, said Detective Courtney, trying to comfort the couple. Detective Courtney, I think we would like to go home now and start making arrangements. This has been too much to handle. I need to call work and let them know I won't be in for a while. Can you take us to the garage? Asked Mark. Not a problem. Just so you know, we'll be doing a press conference on this later this afternoon. You may get people calling you, like the press and other types of people. Don't feel that you have to talk to them. In fact, I'd recommend you don't talk with them at this time. Just give yourselves time to heal as best you can, said Detective Courtney. He radioed the officer at the secured, covered entrance. Any activity outside? That's a negative, Detective Courtney. All clear, came the response. Okay, I'll take you back to your car now. Here's my personal cell phone number. Let me know if anyone contacts you about this, and let me know how I can help, said Detective Courtney. Thank you for listening to this episode of Create Art Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard or absolutely hated it, hey, please feel free to leave me a comment right there on the website, or you can email me, timothy@createartpodcast.com. If you got something out of any of the episodes here, please consider sharing it with a friend. And if you would, also let me know what would make this a 5-star podcast, I'd like to hear that. I want to make sure that I'm helping you tame your inner critic and create more than you consume. By the way, I run another podcast called Find a Podcast About, and that's where I help you outsmart the algorithm and find your next binge-worthy podcast. You can find that at findapodcastabout.xyz. If you go to the website, there's a way where you can leave me an actual voicemail, which I think is pretty nifty. Anyhow, I have a lot of reviews there of different podcasts from different genres, and I even have some interviews from the podcasters themselves. So if you're looking for a new podcast with a great recommendation, with a well thought out critique of everything you need to know about the podcast, then go to findapodcastabout.xyz. We'll see you next time.